You spent 16 years in school. You learned algebra, geography, the periodic table, the names of kings who died 500 years ago. You learned how to dissect a frog, how to write a 5-paragraph essay, how to calculate the area of a triangle you will never need to calculate again. But nobody, not one teacher, not one class, not one single hour ever explain to you how a credit card actually works, how inflation quietly steals your money every year, how to invest, how compound interest can either destroy you or save you, depending on which side of it you're on. 16 years, 0 lessons on money. And when you ask why, the answer is more uncomfortable than you'd expect.
Let's be specific about what 16 years of education included. You learn the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. You can probably still recite that. You learn the causes of World War I. You learned how to conjugate verbs in a language you no longer speak. You learned Shakespeare, geometry, the water cycle. None of these things are bad to know. Some of them are genuinely valuable. But here is what was never in the curriculum. Nobody explained what happens when you only make the minimum payment on a credit card. Nobody showed you how a $5,000 debt at 20% interest becomes $19,000 over 30 years. Nobody taught you what inflation means for the money sitting in your bank account, how at 7% inflation, your savings lose half their value in 10 years without you spending a single dollar. Nobody explained the difference between an asset and a liability. Nobody showed you how taxes actually work, how the system is structured so that people who earn through labor pay more than people who earn through capital. Nobody mentioned compound interest until it was too late for it to help you and early enough for it to hurt you. You graduated, you entered the real world, and the real world handed you credit cards, mortgages, tax forms, and investment decisions with 0 preparation. That is not an accident. That is a design.
Here's the question nobody asks in school. Who benefits when you don't understand money? Follow the money, as they say. Banks benefit. A financially literate population would never pay 20% interest on credit card debt when they understand the real cost. They would never take loans they cannot afford. They would never pay bank fees they could legally avoid. Financial ignorance is the foundation of banking profitability. Lenders benefit. The less you understand about how interest compounds, how loans are structured, how the true cost of borrowing is calculated, the more you borrow, the longer you stay in debt, and the more you pay. A population that understood amortization schedules would borrow far less. Consumer companies benefit. A person who understands delayed gratification, compound growth, and opportunity cost thinks very differently about impulse purchases. Financial education makes people harder to sell to, harder to manipulate with sales psychology, less responsive to the engineered urgency of limited time offers and lifestyle marketing. Governments benefit. A financially stressed population is a distracted population. People who are anxious about money, who are working 2 jobs, who are one emergency away from crisis, do not have the time, the energy, or the mental bandwidth to examine how power operates. Financial stress is one of the most effective tools of social control ever discovered, and it requires no conspiracy to maintain, just the continued absence of education. Nobody sat in a room and decided to keep you financially ignorant. It doesn't work like that. It works like this. The people who design curricula are not personally affected by financial illiteracy. The institutions that fund education have no incentive to create financially sophisticated consumers. The system produces what it is designed to produce, and it was never designed to produce people who understand money.
Here is what financial ignorance actually costs in real life. The average person with credit card debt pays over $1,000 per year in interest alone. That is $1,000 per year going directly to a bank for the privilege of not understanding how the product works brutally. The average person who buys a new car with financing pays between $3,000 and $8,000 in interest over the loan period for a depreciating asset because nobody explained the true cost of financing versus saving and buying. The average person's retirement savings are insufficient by tens of thousands of dollars because compound interest was never explained early enough for them to act on it. A person who invests $200 per month from age 22 ends up with dramatically more than a person who invests $500 per month from age 35. The math is brutal, and it was never shown to you. The average person pays their entire working life into a tax system they do not understand, missing legal deductions, legal structures, legal strategies that wealthier and more financially educated people use routinely. Not because those strategies are secret, because nobody taught you they exist. This is not about blaming yourself for not knowing. You were not taught. You cannot learn what was deliberately withheld. This is about understanding that your financial struggles are not personal failures. They are the predictable outcomes of a system that gave you 12 years of history and 0 years of money.
Here is the curriculum that should have existed. Lesson 1, how compound interest works. Both directions. The compound interest that builds wealth when you invest early, and the compound interest that destroys it when you carry debt. Two sides of the same mathematical force. One working for you, one working against you. Understanding which side you're on changes every financial decision you make. Lesson 2, the difference between assets and liabilities. An asset puts money into your pocket. A liability takes money out. Your car? Liability. Your house? More complicated than people think. Your skills? Asset. Your invested savings? Asset. This single distinction, understood clearly at 18, would have changed how you spent your first paycheck. Lesson 3, how taxes actually work. Not just that you pay them, but how income tax, capital gains tax, and payroll tax are structured differently. How the wealthy legally pay lower effective tax rates than the middle class. Not because the system is broken, because it was designed this way, and understanding it is the first step to navigating it. Lesson 4, how inflation works and why savings accounts lose value. At 7% inflation, money in a zero interest account loses half its purchasing power in 10 years. This means doing nothing with your money is not safe. It is a guaranteed slow loss. Understanding this changes the urgency of investing. Lesson 5, how debt is designed. Minimum payments, amortization, the true cost of borrowing. How a 30-year mortgage means you pay for your house 2.5 times over. How credit card companies profit from confusion. Understanding debt as a designed product, not a neutral tool, changes how you use it. None of this is complicated. None of it requires advanced mathematics. It requires 30 hours of instruction. 30 hours that were never given to you.
Here is the uncomfortable truth at the end of all of this. The system is not going to fix itself. The curriculum is not going to change fast enough to help you. The banks are not going to start explaining the true cost of their products. The credit card companies are not going to make their interest calculations more visible. This knowledge, the knowledge that should have been given to you at 16, you have to go and take yourself. Not because it's fair, it isn't fair, because the cost of not having it is your financial life. Every year you spend without understanding compound interest, without understanding the difference between assets and liabilities, without understanding how to make money work instead of working against you, is a year the system collects from you. You were failed by an education system that prepared you for everything except the one thing you would face every single day of your adult life. But you are not 16 anymore, and the information exists, and nobody can stop you from learning it now. They didn't tell you? Now somebody is. Start learning. Start today. Your financial life begins the moment you decide it does, not the moment school should have taught you.